time together.
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Henry, your worship associate for this morning. Barbara Brandon will light our chalice this morning. She's greeting, so she has a ways to walk. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. Will you please rise as you're willing and able and join in singing our first hymn, number 145, As Tranquil Streams. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the loving heart. This is the church of the helping hands, where friends come together. Our entire religion is built upon a covenant of principles and values that we uphold as a religious community. In our faith, covenant and to each other. Will you please join with me now as we affirm our covenant? Love is doctrine, quest of truth, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, thus do we covenant with one another.
Ask that you remain seated and join me in the responsive readings. 591. Call that church free. I call that church free, which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence.
That sustaining and transforming power, not made with human hands.
It binds together families and generations, protecting against the idolatry of any human claim to absolute truth or authority.
This covenant is the charter and responsibility and joy of worship in the face of death as well as life.
I call that church free, which brings individuals into a caring, trusting fellowship.
That protects and nourishes their integrity and spiritual freedom, that yearns to belong to the Church Universal.
It is open to insight and conscience from every source. It bursts through a rigid tradition, giving rise to a new and living language, to new and broader fellowship.
It is a pilgrim church, a servant church, on an adventure of the Spirit to
is the prophethood and priesthood of all believers, the one for the liberty of prophesying, the other for the ministry of healing.
It aims to find unity in diversity under the promptings of the Spirit, that bloweth very wisdom, and maketh all things new.
Bless to us these words of our scholar, James Luther.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Gloria Miller, and I am the Religious Education Director, and my pronouns are she, her. Our story for all ages today is entitled Grandmother's Lesson by Elisa David Throop. Once upon a time, there lived a brother and sister named Leah and Sam who were about your age. They were Jewish, and Passover was their favorite holiday because there was so much to do. The day before the Seder, they would help sweep the house clean of all breadcrumbs, help set the table with special Passover dishes, and put an extra chair and cup for Elijah the prophet. And then, on the evening of Passover, the relatives would arrive and the Seder would begin just after sunset. One year, they came to a place near the end of the Seder where their father poured wine into Elijah the prophet's goblet, and he asked the children to go and open the door for him. This was one of their favorite parts because it was so mysterious. They ran to the door and looked up and down the street. They didn't see anyone except the new children next door playing in the yard. No Elijah. Leah came back to the table feeling sad. "Where's Elijah?" she asked. "Every year we pour him wine and open the door, but he never comes. What does he look like? Will he ever come for Passover?" Her parents looked at grandmother. "I have seen him," she said, "though I didn't realize it at first. Elijah comes in many disguises. I saw him long ago when I was about your age. One whole day just before Passover, I was minding my younger brothers, and my mother was resting. There was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there stood a beggar. He was dressed in rags and had an old sack over his back. I saw his shoes were full of holes. 'May I come in and sit by your fire and have some food?' he asked. 'I'm so hungry and cold.' I knew we were not a wealthy family. My parents worked hard and still had barely enough for a simple meal, let alone a Passover feast. 'We have nothing extra for you,' I said, and I shut the door. I peeked out the window and I saw the beggar walk to our next door neighbor's house. The neighbors had even less than we did. The mother worked very hard since their father had died, taking in sewing, but she had many mouths to feed. I was sure she would turn the beggar away, but I saw her open her door and invite him in. The next day, my mother was cooking for Passover, and I was setting the table, and suddenly there came a cry from the kitchen. Our dog had grabbed the chicken from the counter, knocking over the apple pudding my mother was preparing. When my father got home, he found us crying. There was no money to buy another chicken or to make another dessert to celebrate. We were still sitting and crying when we heard a knock on the door. It was our neighbor. She smiled at us and said, "It seems this misfortune has come to you. I would like to invite you to celebrate Passover with us. I don't have much, as you know, but somehow I was able to make more matzo balls than usual, and my soup kettle is full." My parents thanked her and promised to bring the foods that they had prepared that were not spoiled. After our neighbor left, my mother asked me, who was that knocked at our door while I was sleeping yesterday? I said, "It was a beggar. I told him we didn't have enough, and I sent him away." "Where did he go?" she asked. "To the neighbors," I shrugged. My parents looked at each other. "Do you know who that beggar was?" my father asked. "No." "That was the prophet Elijah," Mother said. "He comes to see if we are helping to make the world a better place by being welcoming and generous." We had a wonderful Passover with our neighbors. We found that when we shared from our kitchen, there was plenty for everyone. And when it came to the part in the Seder where my father poured wine into the cup, I asked if I could go and open the door for Elijah. My parents smiled. Grandmother finished her story by saying, "I never saw Elijah again. But ever since then, I try to treat everyone as if they were Elijah. And I find that there's always enough. When Grandmother's story was finished, everyone was quiet. And then Sam asked, "What do you mean that you treat everyone like Elijah, Grandmother?" Grandmother looked at them and asked a question. "What was the last kind and welcoming thing that you did for someone?" "Well, I helped my teacher carry books," Sam answered. "I invited the new girl at school to play with me and my friends at recess," said Leah. "How did it feel?" asked Grandmother. "Good, warm, and happy." "Well, that's how it feels to treat everyone like Elijah." Then Leah jumped up from the table. "I think Elijah would like us to invite our neighbors to celebrate Passover with us. Can we invite them to our Seder?" Mother and Father looked at each other and smiled. Our new neighbors weren't Jewish. They'd recently moved to the neighborhood from Haiti. And this was exactly the spirit of welcoming that Elijah taught. "Yes, go tell them that if they would like to join our Seder, they will find our door open." It seemed Elijah did visit that Passover day after all. Our keeper of the flame today is Liam Ramirez.
We pass this flame of religious freedom from generation to generation.
At this time, we light candles. You are invited to come up and light a candle. We welcome candles of concern and candles of joy, candles of memory, candles of mourning, and candles for that unspoken prayer for which there are no words, and yet a candle flame is needed. Will you come forward, or if you want, raise your hand and we will bring a candle to you at your seat. Blessed is this community. you join me in a moment of silence, followed by a prayer? May those who hunger here be fed. May those who thirst here be slaked. May those who come here in loneliness be embraced. Words of Mahatma Gandhi. Your beliefs become your thoughts. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your values. Your values become your destiny. I have a sermon this morning on including others as a habit of mind. Including others as a habit of mind. I want this community, this BAUUC community, to be more inclusive. I want myself to be more inclusive. I want you to be more inclusive, not just growth for growth's sake, getting more people sitting in here, but rather because being more inclusive will transform me. Being more inclusive will transform you. Being more inclusive will transform this community. And you already know how to be more inclusive. You know how it can transform you. But I fall out of the habit. You fall out of the habit. Sometimes as a community, we fall out of the habit. And so let us relearn the habit of inclusiveness. You came here, I came here, for spiritual growth. I came here on a Sunday morning to be with other Unitarian Universalists rather than sitting at home, because I wanted to grow spiritually together with you. And that means being included, for me, that spiritual growth means being included in something larger, like this community, those of us gathered here this morning. And I'll say, as an aside, that my sermons don't teach much new stuff. I'm not up here going to tell you anything that you haven't heard before. Rather, my sermons call you back, I hope, will call you back to what you already know, what you had already decided to do, and yet somehow fallen away from it, disconnected. I want to call you, rather than teach you something new, I want to call you back to what you already know, and you know that you have a hunger in you to reach out. And you're out of the habit. Repetition of the same thought or physical action develops into a habit which, repeated frequently enough, becomes an automatic reflex. You already have a habit of inclusion. This community already has a habit of inclusion, and we know that because you're here, because somebody included you, because somebody reached out their hand and included you here, and that's how come you came back. So we know that we already have the inclusion, but it bears repeating, it bears strengthening. Including others is just part of the goal. The other is how you will be transformed by renewing your habit of including. And I look around this morning and I notice that the front rows are largely empty. Everybody's sitting back there, and I used to think that was that people were shy or that people were afraid that people would look at them or judge them. But what I have come to think is that you came to be included by all the other people, and if you sat on the front row, if you were sitting like this, and you wanted to see all the other people that you were included with, you would kind of have to like turn around like this, and you didn't kind of look awkward. And so you sat back a few rows so you could see all these other people that you're included with. And that leaves the front rows empty. So it's okay that you're sitting back there. Look at these other people. They're here for you. And what I preach in my sermons, as James Luther Avenel reminded us this morning, is that the church that he calls free does not teach things as doctrine or literal truths that must be accepted, but rather opens for personal interpretation and understanding. And I notice that the clock at the back of the room is out of consensus with my watch. It appears to be wrong. But I ask you to not judge it as wrong, but take the clock as a suggestion of a time that could be. Hold it on to your knowledge of the true time. We are collectively out of the habit, which is why I urge us to be even better. I came to this church. I came to these churches, the Unitarian Universalist churches. I had visited in 1978 and 79. I had visited a UU church, but not affiliated with it, not joined it. And I moved to New Orleans in 1980. And in 1980, I'm a straight guy, and I have two gay sisters. And they were not welcome at that time in many churches. And I came to the Unitarian Universalist Church in New Orleans, and there was a sermon about a month after I had started attending. And it held up gay people as welcome members of our congregation. It was the first gay positive sermon that I had ever heard, and I was already welcome, but it was a message to me that I was welcome even with my family, that I didn't have to be alienated away from my family. And so I was welcomed indirectly into that church. And that was the thing that made me stand up and sign the membership book into that congregation. 40-some years on, we are still a welcoming congregation. We are still an including faith. And we need to practice it more. We keep falling out of the habit, and we keep having to struggle back to it. And so, I urge you to be more welcoming, and don't overcomplicate it. Well, as I was researching for this sermon, I came across there was actually a packet set out by the UUA on inclusivity, and I read in there that the question, how can you be inclusive of others when you're feeling so exhausted? And Russell Lehman said, inclusion isn't about being invited to sit at somebody else's table, it's about building a new table together where each person's voice and presence matter equally. And that's inspiring. And it's exhausting. If I told you that, I would be telling you it's not enough to invite people to the table. You have to build a new table. How many people are good at building new tables? Don't overcomplicate it. If you're the kind of person that can build a new table, great, go for it. Question everything down to its foundations. Overturn the nature of our congregations. If you're good at that, but if you're not good at that, it's enough to have a tired, splintered, stained table and still invite the newcomer to it. Don't overcomplicate it. Your effort is enough to get you back in the habit. I have traveled to many different churches and many different UU churches. And each church does its inclusivity, its welcoming, it's knitting together in a different way. When I was in New Orleans, when I first came to that church, there was a group that would gather together after the sermon, a group of about 5 or 6 people that would gather together shoulder to shoulder, making a closed circle, and caucus among them about where they was going out for lunch. And lunch is a big deal in New Orleans. They do some food. And I kind of, because I was a brash young man, I elbowed my way into the circle, and after about 3 of these, I said, you know, it would be a lot more welcoming. It'd be a lot more welcoming if you decided the lunches in advance and put them in the order of service. And that way a new person like me could feel invited and could actually have something in their hand that told them that this wasn't a closed group. And they said, well, if you're so smart, why don't you do that? And that was their way of being inclusive, because they included me in by affirming, even though I'd only been there for 4 weeks, that I was empowered in their community to organize a lunch group. Now, they were doing it out of laziness, but but they did give me permission. They did give me permission. And so I did that. I started organizing. Somebody told me how to send in a copy into the newsletter. This was before email. Told me the way to actually get something into the order of service, and I did that. And they were impressed enough that they told me that I was now the hospitality chair. So I organized some parties. And they told me that that was enough to put me on the board. It wasn't actually the healthiest congregation that I ever had. But in 3 years I moved, and I moved to Austin, Texas, and I joined First Unitarian Universalist Church. They didn't have a lunch group, and I'd already served on the board of a church. I knew I was kind of in. I suggested that I would be willing to organize a lunch group. And I organized a lunch group, and they said, okay, you're the hospitality. And I did that for a while, and they said, you must be good enough to be on the board. So that's how I got it. And then I moved to New Orleans. I moved to San Jose, California for a summer, and I just didn't even ask permission. I started organizing. They asked me to be the hospitality chair, but I said I was only there for 3 months. And then I moved to Huntsville, Alabama, and started a lunch group. And they included me. I was a newcomer. I had crazy ideas. It was radical. I wanted to go to lunch. And so they made me the hospitality chair. And then finally I came to this church, and I had been here 2 weeks when at this pulpit, right where I'm standing right now, the president of the church stood up and said, you know, we used to have a pretty good lunch group, and it's completely fallen apart. And I said, I am called to this ministry. And part of organizing a lunch group is walking around and looking for who looks bereft and lost and puzzled and wasn't here last week, and asking them, will you come to lunch? It's in the order of service. We're going out for lunch after the service at the IHOP. You're all invited. I was transformed because that group of people in New Orleans 40 years ago asked me to go ahead and gave me permission and gave me inclusion and told me I was enough of a part of the community already that I could organize something, and that they would support me and even praise me, I was included. And I was transformed, and they were transformed. That congregation was transformed a little bit by including me. I'm not a prophet Elijah. They asked me to organize lunch instead of joining, and yet I was included. And you can be included with the habit of inclusion. What does it look like when it works? This church sometimes does end-of-the-month parties. We have parties in people's homes. Once a month, last Saturday of the month, if the calendar cooperates. There was a couple that moved here from Colorado, Jim and Rosalie, and they had been UUs in another congregation. They'd been very involved, and they moved here, and Jim jumped in right away. He started serving on committees and but Rosalie come back. She said she felt like there was a fishbowl and all the cool fish were swimming around in the fishbowl, and she was kind of flopping around outside in the garage. She didn't quite feel connected. And she got asked, will you host the end of the month party? And she said, no, because I'm not connected enough to this congregation. Come on. So finally, Rosalie hosted the end of the month party at her house. And she felt very awkward, and she felt very anxious about it all, and yet, suddenly, one evening in her home, there was the chairman, there was the president of the board, and there was the minister, and there were long-time members who had been members of that congregation, our congregation, for 30 years, and there were young people with young children who had just showed up, and they had all come and honored her as the hostess, and she said she went from being the woman who said, why don't they do this, to say, why don't we do this? What it looks like when you include somebody else is you become an insider, just by the sacred act of inviting Elijah and his Lord. When you work harder on including, you become more connected. I know that there are people that here this morning who say, I don't have the cycles, I don't have the energy, I'm already doing enough to include others. Let people invite you in. If you can't include others, let others include you. This is the congregation that welcomes you. This is the congregation that includes you. If you are like Rosalie, sitting outside the inner circle, wondering why don't they do that, reach out. Join something. Show up at something. Ask somebody else to show up with you. Look around. Don't just look at me. Look at these other people. And you can see them because you're sitting in the back row. Look around at these other people. Think of who you will include. And if you're sitting too far forward, turn around and look at somebody else. Look, include the choir. They're available. This is not just for strangers. Include the shy. Include the downcast. Include the recently bereft. Include even the bitter people, the hard people. The guy that makes you uncomfortable. The woman that won't meet your arm. Reach out. How you will transform as you cultivate the habit of inclusion. The habit of inclusion is for this church, but not just for this church. Include people at school. Include people at the market. Include people at the gym. Include people at the rally. Reach out. Offer coffee. Offer bottled water. Offer tea. Circles of concern. I'm not only talking about inclusion at BAUUC, but this is a good place to start. Look around at these people with the choir. Where are you disconnected? Where did you include even the person you used to be connected to that you're no longer connected to. Joining with people, this BAUUC community, your actions of inclusiveness will transform me. That's what I came here this morning for. I wanted to be included, and if you include me, then I will be transformed, and you will be transformed. Include the lonely, the widowed, include those estranged from their natural families. Include these, the community that is already waiting for you, the table that is already set. Sit down, and after you have sat down at the table and breathe deeply, motion for another to come sit by you. You will be transformed. You will be strengthened. You will be the agent of your own inclusion. Amen.
David. As you all know, our church is able to continue its work because of the generosity of you, our members. We will now gratefully accept your generous offering. If you're visiting with us this morning, please know that your presence here is gift enough.
I've got peace in my soul. I've got peace in my soul. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. Peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul.
Please join me in blessing our offering. This gift
From the abundance of my life, blesses me, our ministries, and world.
program, it says that announcements are next. But really, if you look at these, this is a way for you to be included and also include others. Darcy Truhan was going to make an announcement this morning. I think we have a slide for it on family promise, but she's not able to be here, so I'm going to read this a little bit. There it is. Darcy's the coordinator who works with Webster Presbyterian Church in our church to help Family Promise of Clear Creek, which is a community-based response to family homelessness. They work with churches, schools, and businesses to empower families to become stable and achieve independence. Last year, Family Promise prevented 63 families from being evicted from their homes. Our church has committed to provide 3 evening meals every quarter, and now it's our turn. Darcy's asking for your help to do our part. She needs 2 generous-hearted volunteers the week of March the 2nd through the 9th to help with dinner for these families. You can contact her by text or phone. I don't know if you can, her information isn't up there, but we'll find out for you if anybody's interested in volunteering, and we'll get you in touch with Darcy. Also, Webster Presbyterian needs a couple of strong people to help on Sunday after church, March the 2nd, to help move some cots to an upstairs facility for these families. So give this some thought if you can. Darcy would really appreciate your help. Join us on February the 15th at 8 o'clock a.m. for a community cleanup event at the League City Boat Ramp. It's located off Highway 270 between Highway 518 and Nassau Road 1. Boat captains will transport volunteers to select cleanup sites where we will gather trash using bags provided by Clear Creek Environmental Foundation. Please dress warmly, depending on what the weather is. Or not. Check your weather first. But you might consider bringing work gloves and rubber boots, no matter what the temperature is. Volunteers will return to the Highway 270 bridge between noon and 1 p.m., and you'll be treated to a free lunch and a T-shirt. If you're interested in carpooling, please reach out to Christy Gates at childcare@bauuc.org. And then next, calling all young adults, join us on Saturday, February 15th at 7 p.m. in Cockrell Hall for a rainbow party. Pick a color from the rainbow, deck yourself out in it, and bring a couple of snacks of that color to share. For example, if you pick red, you could bring a can of Pringles or a bag of red candy. We're also going to do a white elephant gift exchange, so bring a small gift in the color that you pick. A lot of thinking going on for you. The gift can be purchased, it can be handmade from a thrift store, or something that you have gently used. And remember to bring your gift wrapped probably in the color that you're supposed to bring, or in a bag, so it'll be a surprise. Okay, next, speaking of red, did you know that every 2 seconds someone needs a blood transfusion? Or that you can save up to 3 lives with 1 donation? And you can get really cool swag that show everyone you're a hero. There's still time to sign up to share this precious gift of life. Our church's semi-annual blood drive is next Sunday, February the 16th. You can sign up in the lobby outside Cockrell Hall or use the QR code, that's a tongue twister, that's up on the screen. Sign up today and give on February 16th. All donors will receive a long-sleeve quarter-zip shirt. That long sleeve just made me think it would hide whatever puncture you had. Oh, I'm sorry, that my mind just went there. If you're interested in becoming part of planning for this year's Religious Education Church Summer Day Camp, be sure to join us next Sunday at 12:30 p.m. in the youth room for a planning meeting. We're looking for anyone who might have suggestions for themes, fun activities, or input about the best dates and time for the camp. And then today, everyone is invited to join us immediately after the service to mingle over coffee and light snacks in Cockrell Hall. So let's come together and share some quality time as a community. Then also after the coffee hour in Cockrell Hall, families, parents, and children are invited to join us for a delightful family potluck lunch at 12:30. Even if you didn't bring any food, there'll be plenty of food, so please come. While the children play and are cared for, parents can engage in meaningful discussions about parenting topics. So So don't miss out on this perfect blend of food, fun, and parenting insights. Also at 12:30 today, our church's Service and Justice Ministry team is meeting in the library. The Service and Justice team is dedicated to putting our UU values into action, serving our neighbors, and promoting social justice in our city and nation. If you're interested in being on the team, join us and let's make a difference. Jeff, do you want to say anything about the red cards?
Yeah,
Come up here, Jeff. Just...
So they can hear you online.
I want to thank CJ in the back there for bringing it to Service and Justice Ministry's attention. Many of you watching the news see what's happening with the immigrants in our country. And one mechanism to help fight back and help and be inclusive is we've got immigration, know your immigration rights red cards available for distribution in front of Cockrell Hall at a table. Look for me or CJ waving in the back. Or the Alloys would be there offering information, and take the cards home. If you know somebody you think might benefit from knowing what their constitutional rights are, should an ICE agent come to their door, that's what the cards will inform them of. So take a look at them, become more informed yourself, and let's help out where we can. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And then finally, stay connected with everything that's happening here and ways to be included by subscribing to our weekly newsletter. It's delivered every Tuesday, and it's packed with news, events, and updates about everything going on in our community. Use the QR code on the screen or visit BAUUC.org to sign up for that newsletter today. Okay. Will you please rise now as you're willing and able and join in singing our final song, number 113, Where is Our Holy Church?
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth or the warmth of community. May those who came bereft and lonely and hurting, may those who came here this morning or are joining us, who are carrying heavy loads, be salved, be touched, be included, be with us. Amen.
Amen.